Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Deal Flow Live. This is the show where we talk about business transactions, buying and selling businesses. We give you the lowdown on how this stuff works, from the valuations, from how the transactions go down, what types of businesses are good ones to focus on. And today we're talking about kind of a special topic, which is valuations. And this is one of the things that I get questions about the most from people who are looking to buy businesses and also people looking to sell businesses. How do you value a business? And this is worth a whole conversation because it's really not a simple answer. It's different from every business, especially when you're talking about small businesses. We're going to talk a little bit about how it is an art and a science. We're going to talk a little bit about the different types of revenue, how the quality of revenue can influence that. We're also going to talk a little bit about cash collection, how the way that a business collects cash can influence this, and just how this varies from industry to industry. Ryan, what do you think is kind of the biggest misconception when it comes to valuations?
The common one is what we see on many broker sites where the SDE or seller discretionary earnings or the cash, the end of year cash is the so-called price point that people are basing their valuations off of. And that's strictly for, in my opinion, the more trade businesses, more one-to-one business, where I'm going to fix a thing, I fix a thing. So when it comes down to services like accounting or financial services and some more like background industries where what you don't really see necessarily what's happening, but it's happening in the background, it's a different way of evaluating. And the seller discretionary earnings is not the way that you would evaluate, say, an accounting practice.
That's right. Yeah. Accounting is one example that's a little bit different than most. A lot of small business, like your average small business, is going to be valued on like a multiple of the earnings or the profit or the seller's discretionary earnings. Accounting is a little bit of a weird one where it's actually valued on a multiple of the revenue of the business, because it's very much about like the book of business itself. It's about like, can this book of business continue? And it's really just, acquiring like a list of clients with the hope that some of them are going to continue. Hopefully most of them. And so accounting businesses are usually valued more on like a 1 to 1.5 multiple of revenue. So if you got a business that's doing, let's say, $1 million a year in revenue, and it's doing, let's say, $500,000 a year in earnings, rather than doing like a 2 or 3 multiple on the earnings, which might be like a 1 million or a 1.5 million, actually would come out to about the same in this particular case. But you would actually look at the million itself of revenue and say, I'm probably willing to pay anywhere from like 1 million to 1.5 million for this business. And a lot of that is going to depend on the team, I would say, the quality of the revenue, what kind of team is going to be in place, and are they going to be able to keep those customers going? Are there account managers and like relationships that are staying in the business? That's a very important thing. If it's one owner that is leaving and taking all their relationships with them, loses a lot of its value as well.
And to another point, it's about how does your cash collection function? When you're talking about accounting, normally you pay for a base fee, but then there's sometimes, you pay at the end of it. I know some accountants that will be like, look, whatever your return is, I mean, literally TurboTax, I think this is one of their main models, is like, hey, whatever you're owed, we'll take it off your refund. And I think that's a kind of a common practice thing. So like with accounting, if you're having half your people do the just take it off my return model, and half the people being like, I'll pay whatever it is, here's my card, you're only getting paid once that's done. And in many cases, that's during a season. So you can't actually really accurately predict sometimes your year over year, because like you said, if it's tied to the owner, it's a small operation. When he leaves, so does the accounts. Or if it's a larger operations, you don't know how everybody's taxes are going to look year to year. Somebody could have a great year, people could have bad years. I mean, there's so many variables that you have to base it off a different way than strictly how much came in, what was your sales, and what did you take home.
And this is where it really gets into the art versus science conversation, because how much an owner is staying on and how much they're going to be assisting, after a transaction happens, is very rarely black and white. It's very rarely either they're staying on and helping as a partner of the business, or they're completely going away. Sometimes it's black and white, but I would say, 80-90% of the time it's not. And in a lot of cases, whoever's buying a business is going to want continued help from whoever's selling it for at least a period of time. So it really comes down to a little bit of art rather than science at that point, because you have to make a judgment as a buyer of this business. How much support am I going to have, and how much support do I need for this to be worth what they're saying it's worth? And that's where it gets a little tricky. So it really just comes down to like risk. The more risk there is, the lower the price should be, or at least the lower on like a range of what's reasonable it should be. The cash collection thing that you mentioned is a really, really big point for a lot of small businesses. I'll use the example of HVAC businesses and the trades because we talk about that a lot. There's a really good example. When private equity looks at HVAC businesses, they usually prefer residential versus commercial businesses. There's a really strong reason why, and it's all about cash collection. A commercial HVAC business that does mostly commercial jobs, like meaning large facilities, business to business type of work, the way that they collect cash, they might take a deposit for the jobs. Not even always, though. Sometimes they don't even take a deposit, but they might take a deposit for the job. But then they're probably not going to get paid until at least 30 days, if not 60 or 90 or more days after the job is completed. So, I own an HVAC business right now that does a lot of commercial work. One of the jobs that we did in January, we still haven't been paid on. Many jobs we've done that it's been 30 days or more, we haven't been paid on. Once it gets into the 60 or 90, usually it's rare that it gets that far. But my point with saying that is whenever you're buying a business, one of the most important things for putting that cash down is how quickly can I get that cash back and then actually make a return on it. And if you have a business that is like long cycles of waiting to get paid while having already paid to have the labor do the work, then all of a sudden you're not getting that payback as quickly, and you're not able to grow the business quite as quickly either because you're waiting to get paid and that cash flow isn't coming up front. Now, on the residential side, rather, you actually typically get paid on the day of the job or right around then. So you're not having to float this cost of labor and materials and wait to get paid on it. You're usually just collecting payment right there on the spot. So when you are a business that has a lot more of your money coming early, you can then redeploy that money to maybe buy a new truck, buy a new machine, pay to bring on a new employee that has a base salary that's going to help you grow the business somehow. These are all things that you can do a lot more quickly that help you pay back whatever you put into the business to buy it. So you should be willing to pay more for a business that has cash flow that comes earlier. It's kind of like what I like to call a cash flow versus a cash suck business. Cash suck business is one that you have to put a lot of cash into to even get your money back in the first place. And the money is still going to come, but some of it's not going to come. Some of it's going to be delinquent, and you might have some jobs that you actually pay for all the labor and the materials on and then never get paid, or you have to send it to collections and get paid less. And put a lot of time and energy into it. So it's just a really big thing to consider when you're buying a business. If you have two HVAC businesses, for example, that are doing the exact same amount of, sellers' discretionary earnings per year off the same amount of revenue, and have both been around for the same amount of time, say 10 years, but one is all commercial and one is all residential, the residential one is worth more. It's worth a good bit more money, because it is more easily able to pay back your investment.
On a little aside on that one, it's also dependent on you, the buyer. If you're a GC or you're somebody who works in construction, you have a construction-based business, you're probably going to go you're probably going to knock down on the one that does construction more, and you're probably going to know I can get a good deal on this one because I already know this industry. Off the street buyer like us, we might look at those and see two businesses that look the same. Oh, but these guys get bigger contracts. Bigger contracts equal more money, not having any idea how to get stumbled in. So I think when you're looking to grow a steady, safe business, you're better off getting into the residential side where you could get on plans and get on some sort of payment system where you have tiers and stuff. Especially because we know what a homeowner's like. We've lived in houses, we lived in apartments. We know that you need to do regular maintenance. So it depends on you as the buyer where you're coming from too. What we say might be good for one person, but might be not as advantageous for somebody else. So that's also something you have to evaluate: is where are my skills, where am I going, what am I doing, and what applies. But I'd say for the general buyer, your residential is going to be your best, especially if you can figure out how to get those illustrious maintenance plans that people can just pay it and forget it. Like I saw one recently, 450 residential plans on a yearly retainer. That's impressive.
And now the big takeaway from this is not just the residential versus commercial thing, but it's actually, this is something that applies to any business. When you look at a business, you need to be thinking, if you're thinking about buying a business or thinking about selling your business, you need to be thinking about how is cash collected in the business. And now if I was ramping up to sell my business, I would be thinking about this, that if I've got that commercial business that's mostly doing big business to business contracts, this could apply to any B2B versus B2C company across any industry. But if I'm taking a really long time to collect my money, and that's something I could influence somehow, give the example of our company, we previously were not taking any deposits on big commercial jobs. Now we require a 25% deposit. So we do take some of that money up front. Our company now, if we were to sell it, is worth more because we collect more of that cash earlier. So if it is something you can influence as someone who owns a business thinking about selling it, start making moves to collect your cash earlier, or more of your cash earlier. You're going to make your business worth more. Other thing we wanted to cover is the quality of the revenue, right? So cash collection versus the quality of the revenue, kind of two different conversations. But when I say quality of revenue, there's kind of a spectrum here, right? You could have a business that's anywhere from, and your business is probably going to be a mix in most cases of this, but you could be anywhere from the one side of the spectrum, which would be your all one-off jobs or one-off payments from your customers, versus the other side, which is recurring revenue. So you could be anywhere in that spectrum. And in the middle, right, you might have, like, let's think of a business. You might have, so as let's say you're an estate planning attorney. Most of your customers, it's going to be like one time that they do something with you, and it's just going to be, they do it, it's done. The life cycle of that customer, they're probably not going to, keep doing something with you.
Was the pun intended on that one?
How so?
The life cycle?
Unintended, but
nice.
Interesting. And that might not be the best example, but my point here is
I think it goes, I would say, let's talk to HVAC. You get your filters cleaned. Like, you're doing residential stuff, filters are going to be quarterly things.
Well, that's going to be regular. I'm trying to give an example of one that's just one-off.
Somebody doing a retrofit. That's a one-off, or a full change out of a unit. That's a one-off. Yeah. Normally. Usually you're not going to get too much.
So let's say a funeral planning business, right? Your customer.
You're feeling dark today.
I'm feeling dark, but I want to give the extreme example on one side and then the extreme on another side. You as a person, you die one time, you're going to pay funeral cost one time. That's one payment from a customer. Now, that business is not going to be, it's not going to have as high quality of revenue because that customer isn't going to keep paying for service. Now, on the other side of it, if you've got a software that's a monthly payment and it's a very sticky service, it's something that people stick with for years and years and years, and the customer pays every single month, that revenue is a lot higher quality. So if you're a lot of one-time payments and customers really only ever come to you one time, that's low quality revenue. High repeat purchases, like where the revenue is literally just on a monthly subscription and you're not even having to bill people multiple times. It's just, automatic. Mm-hmm. Higher quality revenue. You should be willing to pay more for a business that has that higher quality revenue. Now there's something in the middle too, where the revenue is not recurring, but it's reoccurring. This might be something like a nail salon, right? Customers aren't on like a subscription plan necessarily in most cases, but they're coming back pretty regularly to get their nails done. So that's a pretty high quality revenue as well if people are making a lot of repeat purchases.
So
definitely something willing to pay
yeah,
more.
Yeah. Okay. No, I see where you're going here.
Yeah.
Went from I mean, I don't. Wow, we jumped from funeral homes to nail salons. What a gambit today.
Well, there's a lot of different industries out there to consider, and the valuation behind them, it can be a little unclear when you're trying to draw parallels from one industry to another.
I think there's no straight line when it comes down to it, because like we said, even though we can say we can use service based as our primary thing, there's what are the quality of the leads? How new are they? How long have they been there? Are these contracts, which if it's okay, we're back in construction. Oh, wait, but it's a contract for X amount of years guaranteed. But wait a minute, is there a clause in that contract that allows them to nullify it if the owner sells it, which is a thing in a lot of places. So you got to check for that. So there's a lot of gray area, and we're probably going to do a couple more episodes like down the line about this kind of stuff. But I think we've kind of covered it, the quality of the revenue and the type of revenue, two very big things to really look into when you're analyzing a business that you want to either own or operate, or even invest in to grow your own business, to understand how that cash flows.
That's right. And, as you're considering these things, really, there's no perfect business. There's no, worst kind or best kind of business necessarily. It's all just about what applies to you. And these are things that you should be thinking and considering when you're buying or selling a business, gearing up to sell a business. Now, if you are someone who's gearing up to sell your business and you want to figure out how to go from more of a cash suck business to a cash flow business and make your business worth more, that's the type of thing that we help with at Scale for Sale, my company. You could go to scaleforsale.com if you want to look into how we help you do that. And if you're someone who's looking to buy a business and you're looking to get some help analyzing deals, Ryan and I and our partner Grant, we have a community tied to Scale for Sale called My First Equity Deal, where we help you actually find and negotiate your first equity deal, whether it's a full buyout, partial buyout, partnership of some kind. We help you get equity in your first or next company. So you can go to school.com/myfirstequitydeal and check that out. And we hope to see you there. We'll see you on the next episode of Deal Flow Live every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.